Farm for Profit Podcast. Take a listen, have a blast. Farm for Profit Podcast. Learn about farming while having a laugh. Farm for Profit Podcast.
And listeners, welcome back with the Farm for Profit Podcast. This is David Whitaker and
Corey Hillebo's here.
And where are we at?
We are at the 2024 Farm Progress Show here at the John Deere booth. We are on the third day, and it's supposed to be the hottest day, I think, here, but we at least have a very good breeze. You might hear that in some of the mics. Hopefully Tanner can work his magic on the editing side of things and make that go away.
I think you're all right. Yeah, it has been a wonderful show. Of course, we're here at the John Deere booth, and always glad to have a proud partner there with John Deere. They set us up awfully nice, and we get to interview all types of people on all different types of subjects. And, of course, one thing, Corey, on Farm for Profit Podcast that we talk about is just what's working right now, what's working in ag, and that might just be one product specific.
Yeah, but first, before we get to what's working in ag segment, we need you guys to go like, rate, review.
Oh, always.
Hit us up, give us 5-star reviews, and then we say you can type whatever you want. If you want to say Tanner has a big nose, go for it. We don't care. We just need the reviews because that helps. It's basically like you patronizing us without having to give us any money or anything.
Tell you
like
what
that.
you can
it
do.
Makes us
we have
legit.
a new employee. Emily, or no,
oh,
Rachel.
Here we go.
Just kidding. I did that on purpose. The Rachel is our new employee,
face.
and you need to go and just ask questions about her, and then she can comment on social and tell you all about herself.
And you can also call or text us at 515-207-9640.
You got it.
And that'll go to Tanner, so bug him at all hours of the night. That would be great. So, but yes, we should get into our What's Working in Ag segment. We have Brian Robertson here, CEO of Estes Concaves. I have worked with Brian for several years on the concaves. I think I'm on my third set, just inherently because I've had to get rid of combines and all that kind of stuff. Awesome stuff. So, Brian, welcome to the show. Give us a little background about yourself.
No, I appreciate you having me here. It's a good day.
It is.
Yeah, so just let me give you a little bit of brief background on everything, and then we can go into some more specifics.
Yeah.
So I'm originally from Kentucky.
Okay.
Grew up in a farming community. Everyone farmed. My mom was a teacher at county school. My dad is a electrical and mechanical engineer.
Okay.
And so I went to school there at Murray State. I went in pre-med, ended up with a chemistry, math, and finance degree.
Okay.
And from there I moved to Dallas, Texas, and decided I wanted to go into finance. So went into wealth management, did that for a little while, had a startup, went into the startup world, exited from that, went into private equity, did private equity for a while, and then got into the agriculture. So I've kind of seen a whole range of things, and my background is, even though I've worked on farms and been around farms, my background isn't exclusive to farming.
You didn't grow up, going out and helping dad combine something or feed cattle or something like that.
Exactly. So I've done that, but that wasn't where I grew up, and it hasn't been my entire life. I've done a lot of other things outside of that. So I think that gives me a unique perspective, and I look at things a little differently than probably a lot of people can't see the forest because of the trees type thing.
Right.
Yep.
Well, so a little perspective for you may not know, Dave is kind of the same. He did not grow up farming, and this is actually his first. He's been in agriculture, selling real estate and equipment for how long now, Dave?
Be 16 years, 17 years.
Oh,
Yep.
wow.
And this is his first year he bought a farm, and he's actually farming.
Well, there you go.
Harvesting is the moment of truth, and you need a combine that delivers. Meet the John Deere S-Series combines, engineered for the ultimate performance in any crop condition.
With cutting-edge technology, unparalleled efficiency, and maximum grain quality, the S-Series ensures that you get the most out of every acre. Elevate your harvest with precision and reliability that only John Deere can offer.
Contact your local John Deere dealer or visit Deere.com to learn more. John Deere, run with us.
You don't know what you don't know until you don't know.
I
Until you try.
almost think, though, like not getting bit by that bug when you're young, like I'm going to farm because that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
Right now you can kind of step back and look at it as a business, as it should be treated.
Yep.
And you have that different perspective. I bet that helps you in a lot of your business.
Oh, for sure. And I mean, Randy Dowdy's a great example of that.
Yep.
You know,
Yep.
I mean, when you you come into it with a different lens. You're going to ask different questions. You're going to ask different questions coming from real estate.
Oh yeah.
You have a different paradigm coming in, and you're going to get a different perspective. And I think that's helpful. And even if you're a generational farmer, groups like you and some of the others help introduce some of that into it. Even if you don't have a consultant or a mentor or someone that's outside of that, you can still tap into some of that knowledge base.
Yep. It is interesting to watch Dave, though, because he knows a little bit about everything, about every piece of equipment, every brand, land, and all that. But then when it came time for him to actually do it, boy, you were on the phone with me a lot.
Correct.
You? Trying to get hyper-focused. He's like, I know I need soil samples, but why? Or I know I need to spray, but what?
Yeah.
Even talking about it for the last 5 years on the podcast, lots of people, and maybe that's all of agriculture, because as I've walked around, people are like, well, I know that. And it's almost faux pas, like I should know this because I'm a farmer. And so they don't ask questions. I'm just inherently ask a lot of questions and talk with a lot of people. Well, why'd they build it that way? Why is the side of it plastic? Why is this? Why is that? Yeah. And so, but that's how I learn.
Yeah. So what was you in the decision process to go from Kentucky to Texas? Just thought it'd be a good place to go?
Well, like I said, I'm from a small town, and I always want to do big things.
Okay.
So it kind of was, I need to, you're a product of your environment. Mm-hmm. So I was wanting to seat myself around successful people and the type of people that I wanted to become and kind of think like and everything else.
Yeah.
So it was uncomfortable. It was something I didn't want to do, and usually when it's something that you don't want to do it, you need to do it.
Right.
If you're it's kind of the whole saying, if you're comfortable, you're not growing.
Right. It's kind of one of those, you try not to be the smartest person in the room.
Yeah.
Type of deal. Like, surround yourself with smarter people than you are, and you'll continue to grow.
Even take that statement. If you're not uncomfortable, you're not growing. My wife wasn't all on board for buying the farm.
Yeah.
But I saw it as an opportunity to understand my customers, understand where their position is, and have a little dabble into what they feel every day, right? And so that gives me better decision making. But to borrow another, X amount of money makes you uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And so, but I do think we're growing bigger. Even conversations with locals, like, "Hey, you're in the club now. You're farmer. You feel it just like we do, and we got 390 corn, and that's what it is.
We're gonna go down together."
It makes for more relatable conversation, though, where I'm not a sales guy. I'm just one in the club.
Yeah. No, I agree with you.
So, but we had to be uncomfortable to do it, and I'm still there because I don't know if we're gonna make any money.
Yeah. So you went to Texas.
Yep.
You went there. You were in finance. Is that what you said?
Yeah. I went into wealth management, and then did a startup, and then went into private equity.
So back up one step. You're in like Vanderbilt territory down Murray, Kentucky area, and there's a lot of medical devices, a lot of meds. So you were kind of going pre-med. Was that just a decision to help people, just to go back even a little farther, or?
Yeah, no. So I wanted to help people, and I had a chemistry background. I did the whole high school chemistry thing and competitions and all that. So it was kind of a natural fit. I like solving problems.
Awesome.
So that's kind of where it came into, and I wanted to help people. And then when I got into it, it was a gut thing.
Gotcha.
I just didn't feel like I was going to be happy in that profession.
And a lot of medical people have a lot of wealth, so transition right to your wealth management. And there's a lot of ways to do wealth management, from consulting, advisement, selling insurance, etc. Did you go down a certain path, or?
Yeah. So I actually went to Dallas, had an interview with a wealth management firm. They hired me on the spot, more or less, and we were, it was a traditional assets under management type firm. So you're managing portfolios,
Gotcha.
And obviously you're prospecting to bring in new clients and things like that. But that's kind of where it started.
I manage wealth for Corey. Every time he wants to buy a new watch, I'm like, Corey, that might not be a good idea.
Or a pen.
Jeez.
Well, that one's got gold in it, so
yeah,
you're good.
No, that one's good. That one's good. Order straight from Germany. Just kidding.
That's Tractor Zoom's problem. They may turn me into this.
They turned you in. Okay, fair enough.
And
so
that was at $5 corn, though.
Not to dig in too deep, but I'm a serial entrepreneur. You went startup ways. Was it your startup? You had an idea and went that route?
Yeah. So I had a startup in finance, and then was doing that, and the CEO of our company, I did an interview in New York or something, and was on Bloomberg and whatever, and the CEO called us in. Out, we were good friends, and he said, "Well, I got a call from corporate and or one of our partners, and they said, there's a conflict of interest. You can't do both."
Okay.
So I quit on the spot, went and did startup.
Okay, cool.
And the startup, was that the Estes Performance Concaves, or
No, that was a finance startup.
Okay.
And then from that, I moved into software and did oil and gas accounting software.
Okay.
So I'm a quick learner, luckily, but I can get hyper focused. So I can learn stuff really, really quickly. When I went into oil and gas accounting, it kind of turned into that, but it was ERP management, which is just another type of resource management.
Mm-hmm.
And just kind of jumped in and learned it quick.
Cool.
And then went from there.
And that's how you're probably able to adapt to agriculture pretty quick. I mean, you got to learn and get, because there's a lot of, every old boy at the coffee shop would like to tell me how I'm doing it wrong, but you got to take the good with the bad with the ugly, and the peaches and cream with liver and onions.
Yep, exactly. And I guess like you, asking a lot of questions helps, and that might be annoying for some of my people, and Kimber, and asking a ton of questions, but that's just the way I've always learned, and I think that's a key thing, and I think a lot of people need to do that. And speaking of 350 corn or whatever, I had some questions that I wanted to present kind of rhetorically, to get people to kind of think about what they're doing now, and if you've got these market conditions in this environment, what do you need to do differently than when prices were 30% higher or 50% or twice.
Right. I think we can answer that with the whole title of this podcast is choosing a good partner, identifying good partners.
Yeah.
So I hitched my wagon with Corey. Why? Because I know he knows more than I do in that field and will tolerate me asking questions.
Yep.
I think he's advised me right and to make those decisions because my finances depend on it. And when we talk about the suppressed market or depressed market a little bit, I've been asking him, do I need to upgrade I want to. I like tech. I'm with you, so I want to upgrade a planter because I think it's cool. And he's pumped the brakes, Dave.
Right.
You need to do this first.
Right.
You need to do that first. So I think anybody to win the Super Bowl, sometimes you're not the quarterback.
Yep.
Identifying that is hard.
Oh, man.
And that's one of the hardest choices.
Especially when you're an entrepreneur. I mean, and every farmer is. They're the master of their domain.
Yeah. So before we get into those questions, because we actually do need to get into the meat of that, we don't have to go deep into it, but at some point you went from the finance and the startups to Estes Performance Concaves, which is why you're here today.
Exactly.
So can you give it just a little bit about
that? When I was doing private equity, we bought companies, and then we would companies that were, let's say, on the decline or revenues declining or whatever, we would come in, buy ownership majorities, and then work with management, replace management, fix the companies, and then sell them with some sort of time frame in that. Sometimes 5 years, sometimes 7 or whatever it may be. Kimber's grandmother had an ag company.
Kimber's your wife?
Yes.
Okay.
This is CM Welding, and they had always produced and manufactured combine parts, and including the original RPR system.
Okay.
So they brought me in kind of at that time as a consultant.
Okay.
To help. Sales were declining. The product was more or less getting stale.
Okay.
So we came in, and I helped, basically Kimber and I started the Estes Performance Concaves brand, which was an affiliate of CM Welding.
Okay.
So we started doing farm shows, working on branding, and kind of what I had learned at other places, just let's get it back. So in a month's time, we went from, let's say, 50% down on the year well, it was actually 2 months, 50% down on the year to up 30%.
Awesome.
So there's a big swing there, and a lot of that was the rebranding and doing more partnerships and hitting the farm shows and things like that. And out of that, I started taking all the tech calls, just because that's where we needed help. So I learned very quickly when I was taking all the tech calls how to set machines, what worked, what didn't. And there was just a big need in the market. The RPRs are great. They're great in corn and beans. But in small grains, not so much.
Yep.
Gotcha.
So, I, from my background, went and started prototyping a whole bunch of stuff. And then we were running and testing stuff. So out of that, I've got like 30 patents now.
Wow.
On our system and other things. So the XPR 3 system now is proprietary and to us, and we still sell the RPR system, but that is the system that I've engineered and that we've used, and we're always testing. Like even this year, we're always testing. I'm always, the combine is a game of millimeters. You adjust the concave 1 millimeter at a time.
Yep.
50 RPM on the rotor makes a difference.
Yep.
So there's endless possibilities that I can do with millimeter changes.
Awesome.
And it's, what makes that difference.
So, Corey, as we talk what's working in ag, I always want to talk with a farmer that has this product. You have this product,
I
right?
do.
So let me interview you for a second. Of course, you can buy concaves that come with a combine. So for our listeners that haven't listened to previous events and they're like me and maybe don't know what a concave is, first, explain to me, what does the concave do for my combine?
So to know, you kind of need to at least know a little bit about a combine, period, and how it works. And it takes it in with the head through the throat, and then it comes into the newer style combines, comes into a rotor, which forces the grain around in a circular fashion and basically thrashes it against metal.
So we're taking the kernel off the cob.
And you're trying to get the kernel off the cob, kernel out of the pod, get the weed off the stem and all that kind of stuff, and separate the seed, what you want in your grain tank, from the chaff.
Gotcha. And so necessity is what is it they say? I can't think of the quote. Breeds invention. And so you saw a way to do it quicker, better, faster, and more efficiently. So you're the total package as a CEO. You're not just the financial CEO. You're I listened to the customer. I figured out what's wrong, repatented it, made it better. Corey, you bought this. So now you have these in your combine, and so how better, worse? What do you think?
100% better. And I'll tell you my story about how coming into it was our OEM concaves and our combine were worn out. Our dealer told us, and at that point we could make the choice to put those in, or we could try to find something better. And there's a lot of options on the market, right? Well, farmers, we're in such a tight margin business. We're always looking for that extra ROI. Right? Because if we can pick up dimes, eventually we'll have dollars, right? And so at every stage of the game, there's little things, whether it's being more efficient in the field, planting the right hybrid, getting the right combine, putting the right concave in, right? So there's all these different things I can sit there and pick up little nuggets and get value. And we were looking for that ROI. We weren't quite happy. It was tough to set the combine. We were kind of pushing some through the back, and then we'd tighten things down, and we get a little worse grain quality, and that really hurt us in beans because they dock us pretty bad there. So let's speak to some of those nuggets that we can pick up with these concaves. How does that make it easier for us as farmers? Yeah,
so just to frame things out right now and today, if commodity prices are down, when's the most important time to get a positive return on any $1 that you spend? I mean,
it's easy to say now, but I would say it's just as important as a business owner, as a business person, that you should be worried about getting all the bushels in the grain tank when it's $7 is the same as this when it's $3.
Well, and Brian, if I take your example, so you were wealth management. You had a company in your portfolio that was 30% down, kind of like our market right now, Corey.
Yep.
And you got to spend money to make money. he invested marketing, farm shows, is what I just heard previously, and all of a sudden you were up.
Yes.
You made money. You got to spend money to make money. You got to make those decisions, though.
Yeah, and it's more important to pick. It's more important to think about and position yourself and to pick the right things to spend that $1 in.
Correct.
Because if you've got a war chest and you've got excess, well, you don't notice as much off the top if you've got a bunch of excess.
Yep.
But when you're having to run lean like a startup environment, you have to make sure that every dollar that goes out comes back with more dollars.
Correct.
And so you have to really analyze things. And this is one of the things that I've noticed that I wanted to point out. When we talk with big farms, big farmers, big operators, it's very simple. They think of things not so much on an emotional basis. They think in things in terms of numbers. So they look at things and they look at the input cost, the output cost, what the ROI is. And if it makes sense, it's kind of like a capital budgeting problem. If it's got a net positive revenue or net positive value, they do it. They don't think about it. If it pencils out and it says, for every dollar that you spend, you're getting 10 back, it's a no-brainer.
Yep.
It's your smaller farmers and operators, I think, that really need to think about this because they get more emotional and they're gonna act. They typically would have done is operate more out of fear rather than the bigger farmers that just go by the numbers.
Yep.
And sometimes you need to just go by the numbers.
And that's why what we do, we are the Farm for Profit podcast. We're trying to help you get that emotion out of your business and treat it like a business. And I love it when you can put hard numbers and just look at something. It's like, I know I don't want to spend this money, but I'd be stupid not to.
Yeah.
Type of deal. I mean, you just have to. But in their defense, you walk around the Farm Progress Show here, and every booth has a 3 bushel, a 5 bushel, a something that they're promising you. But that's just their numbers. These are actually hard numbers, right?
Yeah, these are hard numbers, and it's very obvious. I mean, you can go to the demos and see that there's grain coming out the back of the machine.
Yep.
I mean, it's very obvious.
And that might be a good segue right into how to choose partners. So you said it, Brian.
Hold on, I want some of the numbers. He's got numbers for us.
Very good. Well, let's go into numbers then.
Before we are going to get into Tanner's.
I didn't know you had numbers.
I'm much more interested in this side of things than Tanner's. Whatever. Even though it's important. Tanner,
I like it when we go rogue because our third. Yeah, he's
got numbers here. I'm going to let him tell.
It is profit. It's
right?
Profit's in the show.
We need to know it then. Go for it.
So really, there's a few main categories when you're thinking about concaves or your combine and harvest. Like you said, there's 1,000 products out here, but on the harvest side, there's not that many.
Right.
It's usually inputs elsewhere. So here's a couple things. One, fuel savings. People don't think about what a difference they can make in fuel savings, which can add up.
And how does it, or do you want to go through all of them? And then
Let me go through all of them, and then we can circle back. The second one is what we talked about earlier, is grain loss, rotor loss out the back. The third is that people don't think about is dockage, what they're getting docked at the elevator, and then storability. And those go hand in hand. So if we want to talk about storability real quick, when you harvest corn, when you look in your grain tank, you can't see the hairline cracks and the fines and things like that, unless you do the iodine test, and then you can see it.
Well, yeah.
Where you notice it is if you dry it, or even if you don't dry it, it's whenever you empty the bin. And we've had several farmers, the very first year, we reduced their grain damage and their fines that they hauled out the next year, $300,000.
Wow.
Oof.
Just in dockage?
50 semi-loads.
Wow.
That's just storability. And you don't see that immediately. You see it later.
Okay.
When the kernels dry down, and then those splits become bigger, just like anything else would.
Shrinking, swelling, all that.
Yep. And then they're left with this pile at the bottom of the bin.
Yep.
And so that one factor alone is a 30x.
Yep. And we know this very well because our other partner, Suka Manufacturing, makes grain bins.
Yep.
And if we get a lot of fines in the bins, we can't move the air through like we need to,
Yep.
and then you get spoilage, and then it becomes not a dockage; it just becomes where they're not going to buy it. Type of deal.
And to parlay that into dockage, so we talked about corn and soybeans. It splits. So like Bex did a study with us. We've done studies with other ones. We've done our own germ test and everything else, and we reduce splits, say from 3% down to usually like 0.2%, and that a lot of times is a direct. You see that directly at the elevator because they dock you on the splits.
Yep.
You know, and on 1,000 acres of soybeans, you know, in corn on dockage, that's 16,000.
Wow.
And just that. So, you know, those are the two big things that people don't think about.
Yep.
The fuel savings is the system typically gives you more. It increases capacity, and sometimes we see a 2x in capacity over a regular machine. But where you really see that is with the capacity, and the combine is able to run more efficiently. So combines work best when they're loaded up, when you have max material.
Yep.
When you have OEMs and you try to load the machine, what happens is you end up having rotor loss. Because in order to load the machine to where it needs to be efficient, it can't thresh it as fast, and more goes out the back. Right. So, and when you have to run lower, that's when you get into you're not running as efficient, and that comes into fuel savings and everything else.
So your fuel savings isn't coming necessarily as less fuel per hour; it's coming on more productivity.
Well, it does both. I mean, we've seen 0.9 gallons per acre improvement.
Okay.
Now in hill country, you may not see it as much because you got to climb the hills one way or another.
Yep.
But in fuel savings, that's one thing. But the big thing that most people notice, and you can see at the demos, is the corn out the back.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And what differentiates us more so than anything is we can have a 1% loss or less at 7,000 bushels an hour. And for an OEM to get that same 1% loss, they're at 3.5, 3.8. So that's the productivity.
Yep.
But we can both get to 1% loss. It's just that the OEMs are doing half the speed to do that 1% loss.
Okay. And I can speak towards the splits you were talking about on the beans because we have seed beans on our farm. And the first year that we had them in our concave or in our combine, Dave, we actually got an award from the company we were growing seed beans for because we had out of all the growers that grew that variety of beans, we had the lowest, they call it clean out, so the lowest pods, the lowest splits and all that because they need a full bean to grow a seed for next year. And, we got an award for that. We didn't get paid anymore. That's what I was like, thanks for the paper.
Well, that's awesome.
Well,
But it is.
And let me tie it into we're here at the John Deere booth, and of course our great partner. And there's concave sitting right in front of us, and there's a combine sitting right in front of us. And I know I've asked you this before, Corey. I'm like, well, if stuff's so much better, why don't they put it in the factory unit? And you told me it's because most of the time when an OEM's building something, great partner, they're building it to cover lots of different areas, maybe not just the guy doing seed beans or just the guy doing this. And that's where both companies work symbiotically together, where you assist for certain things, correct?
Yeah.
Is that I mean different small grains and
think
big
of it
grains?
like a race car, right? Like everyone has aftermarket parts and all that make it goes faster, make it the suspension work better or all that. Like they make a great combine.
Okay.
Right out of the box that could go anywhere in the world and harvest.
They're just
souping it up.
Oh, I got you.
Yeah, and so our concave, there are specific concaves in the aftermarket that are for like corn and beans, but you get into small grains, you have to change concaves still.
Okay, you do.
Even with aftermarket, most of them you have to put bands on, you have to take out half the concaves, put in a different concave. What we designed, what I engineered, is good across all crops.
Oh,
and
cool.
it doesn't need, you don't have to change concaves, you don't have to put bands or
So there's some money
inserts in.
saved too that we didn't even talk about. You're talking
You don't
about
have to have
labor.
two sets,
I remember
you
you
don't have to
swearing
labor.
some days. That's
Oh, it's not fun to put concaves.
No. So you're saving time and labor, and
Yeah.
And in small grains, they're just not as good as OEM. I mean, we had a farmer a couple years ago that they take their wheat seed and have it cleaned and re-drill it for the next year. They were doing 4x the speed of cleaning the wheat, and that weed seeder or the wheat cleaner that had been operating for like 30 years said he's never cleaned wheat this fast because there was so little FM in it.
That's crazy. That's absolutely crazy. And you went from XPR2s to you just released the 3s.
Yeah, so the biggest thing with the 3s is we were able to make a few millimeter adjustments that made the difference so that we could get rid of the bands and covers. So the 2s had covers and bands that we would put on there to help hold in the crop material a little longer for the small grains mainly. And we were able to completely eliminate that. And just to prove the effectiveness, we were in 30, 40 bushel wheat, which is low material to begin with, even with a draper, but running a stripper head. So you're bringing in almost nothing.
Yep.
And we were able to get below 1% FM with that too, and increase capacity. And we saved that farmer 20 days just on harvest time of their wheat.
Wow. Well, and if you value your time at all, and if you value you should value the depreciation on the hour of the machine.
Oh yeah, for sure.
You know, that's a big
I've
cost.
never even thought about that.
Oh
honestly.
my gosh.
I mean, you're right.
If you start thinking what the depreciation on an hour of these tractors and combines are,
Yeah.
ooh,
Yeah.
I bought a newer tractor, a 2020 John Deere 8345, and we paid a lot of money. It was the most money we've ever spent on a tractor. I was shutting the thing off when we were in beans, because I knew how expensive every hour was on that thing. Because you can physically go see that tractor at 2,000 hours sells for this, that tractor at 1,000 hours sells for this. It's a very easy calculation to go, that's an expensive.
See, now I've got to make a new spreadsheet because I haven't even modeled that.
There is, and another person that we've interviewed on the podcast, Tractor Zoom.
Yep.
I use Tractor Zoom Pro as a auction company, and so they're studying those analytics to where might be somebody to talk to, because they're telling me that as soon as I hit right at about 1,800 SEP hours on the combine, the bell curve. So it's like and then I mean it just crashes right at about that time, because then it's almost where guys don't want to buy it, and it's worth just buying the new one or upgrading from there. So they have a lot of data on that. Of course, that's their data company.
There's just so many moving parts. They do such an amazing job, but there's just so many moving parts and bearings and wear surfaces and things.
Oh, mercy.
And these high yield crops that we're putting through them, it's crazy. I had we bought a 1,000 SEP hour S780 that was 4 or 5 years old 2 years ago, and so 1,000 hours, right? We had to replace the auger in it
mercy.
because they had put so much grain through the dang thing, and I'm like, man, these guys must have been yielding like a banshee.
Yeah.
Came out of Northwest Iowa, so it's they just grow 300 bushel corn, just throwing seeds out there. No problem.
Yeah.
But
And in rice country, they don't want you putting more than 100 or 200 hours on any one machine just because it's so abrasive.
yeah, and rice is very abrasive.
Yeah.
Yeah. We had a friend that bought a rice combine once on an auction and got it home. I was like, oh no.
Yeah, and the augers are one of the first things to go.
Yep. Unlock your equipment's true potential with Steinbauer.
Whether you're looking to boost your power or improve fuel efficiency, Steinbauer has the right performance module to get the job done. Their easy-to-install technology can be a game changer for your operation.
Get more from your machines this harvest season with Steinbauer and start farming smarter today. Visit steinbauer.us now for more details.
Steinbauer, powering the future of farming.
Yep.
Oh, cool.
Yep. So, anything else on that before we actually jump into what Tanner wants us to talk about? Got any numbers on there? Or
I mean, I could talk all day, but we can move on.
Let me give you a couple of these, and they tie into everything, and that is, I love the progression of how we got there to now we're not just.
That's a great story.
We're an engineer now. We're not only an engineer, but running a company and trying to still improve for farmers. What's next? So we got new models of Estes Concaves. What's the next portion for Estes?
That's a good question. So I've got a few things in my back pocket, as always, that we're testing and trying and trying to fill out the market in kind of on an isolated basis and pilot programs and things. As far as the concaves go, like I said, I've got 10 different versions I'm testing this year.
Okay.
I'm always testing, trying to beat. We always compare against OEM, and we always compare directly against our current system.
Okay.
I'm always trying to beat it. So, right now we're just heads down, focused on this and getting it right. And it's one of those things. If you chase 2 rabbits, you might catch none type thing. So right now we're just heads down, focused on this. Personally, we have, I'm in real estate and private equity still, so I've got other things that we do. But as far as Estes is concerned, our primary focus right now is just the concaves, and we feel like that's actually a competitive advantage. We want to stay focused, we want to become a resource to be harvest experts.
Well, and that's what people, if you had a heart attack right now, Corey, you would not Google general practitioner. What do you think you Google? Cardiologist, right?
911.
Everybody wants the expert in that field. That's why I specialize in just farmland, not even other real estate, farmland specifically, because people want to hire the expert in that field, and you guys are the expert there. So being that expert, I'm guessing, Corey, you have data. I know your John Deere Ops, you're using other things to get that. Does that help you, Brian, if they bring their data? So a new customer, never used you, hear our podcast, they're like, hey, wait a minute, this is cool, let's try it. Testimonial from Corey here. And they're like, all right, we're gonna dump the clutch. Do they bring their data to you and say we've done this, here's our yields, here's our that, or do you just give them here's our product?
We don't typically, but if they are willing to, if they have multiple machines, a lot of times I'll say keep one OEM, put our system in
never
another.
Thought about that. Okay.
And then I'll let the ops center tell you.
Yep.
And it's very obvious.
Okay, so where do they find you? So let's get the pitch here.
EstesPerformanceConcaves.com. They can find us there. We're at shows also. Just go there and all the information, and we can get your brochures or whatever.
Yep.
And talk. We like talking to everyone because we like to understand where the market's at. We like to understand the farmer, what their needs are, what they're wanting. And we try to form relationships with our customers.
Perfect. And one more question that I just thought of before we go Tanner's way. So at a show, I'm a salesman. There's always naysayers that, you can't sell my farm, or should I sell it at auction? There's got to be naysayers. What's the biggest naysayer when they come up to your booth here? What do they say? And what's the answer to the question?
The biggest naysayer is typically That's a hard one because honestly we don't. If they come to us, usually they've done enough research.
They already know about the product.
They're usually buyers.
If I know most farmers, it's probably what's the price?
Yeah, and the biggest thing.
Yeah, you're probably right.
The thing, I guess, if you wanted to go the price route, they could say, okay, well, you're 30% more.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, whether it's $6,000 or $10,000, when we're talking about $300,000 in storability and $50,000 out the back of the machine,
value, et cetera, et cetera.
It's peanuts. So it's really our job to convey the value, because $6,000, $10,000, it's all the same.
Yeah.
When you're talking about the ROI, and it's very easy. Just on 1,000 acres of corn, 1,000 acres of beans, 1,000 acres of wheat, the ROI is 800%.
You need a sign that says the juice is worth the squeeze.
The juice is worth the squeeze.
So if you do 10,000 acres, multiply it by 10.
Yep. Okay.
Wow. 800%. That's a.
And these are proven. I've got 5, 6, 7 years worth of data.
Cool.
From Ops Center, from everywhere, proving this.
And is that $6,000 to $10,000? Is that the range that you normally fall in? I mean, I know it's different for every model and all that kind of stuff.
Yes. It's all within that, depending on the model, but it's right there. And I would be hard pressed that you will find any harvest investment that gives you that kind of ROI, especially day one in the field.
Yep. I could see that. So let's jump into Tanner's portion. This will be a smaller portion of the show than the great stuff. But you went in and bar rescued, basically, is what I was thinking. When you went and did this. I imagine you had a lot of different hiccups and partners that you had to make some tough decisions. This is about partners. How do you choose your partners, and what partners did you choose when you were bar rescuing this welding business?
Yeah, so I'm from Texas, and the Texas way is you do business with people you know and trust.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter the cost. If I know and trust you, I don't care that you're 20% more.
Yep.
I'm going to buy from you.
Yep.
You know?
Corey, is that the way it works? When I sell your farm, you're like, can you do this cheaper. No,
Yeah. Well, they charged me a little more commission, but I guess I like them. So
yeah, I guess I like them.
Yeah.
They charge it.
Part of that comes because Texas is oil and gas.
Yeah.
Private oil and gas, so the margin's there, so it's not as big of a thing. But it comes really down to that. So when we came into it, when we moved to Texas, we were looking at manufacturers in Texas.
Okay.
So I really look at the company's ownership and management. I want to know that they have the same values and the same, beliefs, or lack of better words, than we do as a company. And
relatable. Are
yeah.
they relatable to you as your customer? I mean, I do business with people that look, feel, act like me.
Yeah.
So relatable.
Yeah, and I also look at who their customer base is. So our first manufacturer in Texas was a pretty large operation. They did defense contracts, did stuff for Lockheed Martin, did stuff for Boeing. They did stuff for Berkshire Hathaway railroads and other things.
Wow.
And when anytime you're getting into aeronautical stuff, there's no margin of error.
No.
You can't. So just that, so I look for competency through who they're currently doing business with.
Yeah.
And that was a big thing. The downside to that company was that they lacked flexibility. They're a big operation, 500,000 square feet, maybe 1 million now. And the thing is, whatever you put into the plans to do a rev on or change, you were 8 months to get that implemented.
Wow.
And that works, if you're making trailers and you're pumping out 1,000 trailers a year, and the change that you're doing isn't that big of a deal, you can work that into inventory in the product cycle. But with us, sometimes we notice something and we want to make a change now.
Yep.
Even if it's just a tiny change, we're testing and we see the benefit of it. We wanted to have quicker rev cycles, and that is when we decided to bring things in-house. So everything that we do now is in-house. We also wanted to be in control of our own procurement and steel and our own welding and everything else.
Yep.
And we'd had some bad partners along the way that we would, even though they did most of it, we would sub some stuff out. And quality control suffered because of it. Now, we still did our due diligence, but you part on the subs as a contractor, as you know, they don't have skin in the game. They're not as invested, and they may cut corners that you're not aware of.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's one of the things you kind of have to be careful about. And that was another factor that led us to bringing everything in-house.
Corey, I'd say this is a great argument that I make all the time for when you're picking a partner. So you might pick a partner to sell your farm, right? Well, when you do, there's big companies. There's $900 million companies, and then there's smaller companies too. I like being the smaller company because just what Brian's saying is when you want to turn the boat and you see something that can help your customer, we can pivot really quick. And my fishing boat can turn a whole lot faster than their cruise liner.
Yep.
And so when it takes them time to implement, look at Amazon and how quick they can make a change and how forward they are. There's the Kmarts of the world. They got a good product. They've been here forever. Great. You've been here around 90 years and you're huge. But look at how Amazon, the world's changing, and we need to be, be able to pivot.
Yep. And I imagine that the partners that you did have, the good and the bad, were all part of the process of turning this thing around and realizing that you needed to bring this in-house. And I'm going to tie this back to the same reason a farmer would want to buy a concave, right? We talked about time on yourself and time on the machine. I'm sure, yeah, it's fine. You were doing your due diligence, that you were finding these errors, but your time is worth it as well.
Oh, for sure. I mean, we run lean and mean.
Yep.
And that's part because of my background.
Yeah.
And that's one of the biggest things is you have to value your time.
Yep.
And as any executive knows, that's all you have is your time, and making the most of it. So, I think in terms of ROI on even myself and how I operate my calendar.
Yeah.
Because I've got to pick, because I don't have time to do everything.
Right.
And I have to pick and choose, what to do. And same thing with farmer.
Yeah.
You have to pick and choose what you're going to spend time on, and what you're going to put, where you're going to put your resources.
Maybe that's
money.
the answer to this question. Do you, Brian, have advice for our listeners? How do they pick the right partners that they're going with? I mean, to boost their farm income. So you've done it with a couple different businesses, from startups to where you're at now. What advice do you have for our farmers?
Well, I will still always go back to really trying to see if that company is willing to have a conversation with you.
Okay, good.
Are they willing to have a conversation? Are they willing to listen to you? Do they really have a vested interest or care about you being successful? And that kind of ties into the trust and know part as well. But that's where I would always start. And if they do that, then I would move. That's my first question. Then I would move into the product and the competency and the numbers and the ROI and stuff. But that's my first one is, do they care about my success?
Right. Tanner and Dave always talk about having an advisory committee, surrounding yourself with people that maybe aren't in your industry, but they're really smart and all that. That's part of the way I choose partners. Do you have an advisory committee or trusted advisors around you?
Oh, absolutely. When I first came to Dallas, when I was doing startups, I was introduced to a guy at the club who actually...
The club, that sounds official.
Yeah, at the club. Who had the first internet company and cellular phone company. And he's been my mentor ever since. He's in his 90s now. But I have met with him once a month for the last 10 years. And he's very successful, has more money than he could ever,
Yeah.
But he has kind of helped shape my mind paradigm in getting here. So, like, advisors and mentors are crucial. And the problem, there's this old saying is, do you have 40 years of experience or do you have 1 year of experience repeated 40 times?
Ah.
And the question is, you may have a great generational farm and you've learned from your dad, but you may be repeating 1 year of experience 40 or 100 times, and you need some outside input, some outside perspective, some outside objectivity to ask the right questions, to rethink about things. And it's not that everything's wrong by any means.
Right.
But you have to kind of pick nuggets and come in from a clean slate or objective and kind of piece it together. And that's what that's what you do.
Mm-hmm. That's 100% what we do, and agriculture is the perfect example of that. If you continue to do what Grandpa, what Dad, and all that, like they did the best they could with the times and the resources that they had, but the technology and everything is moving so fast, like Dave said with the Amazon example. We have to be willing to keep a good core of what we know is good business, but then adapt and try new things and surround ourselves with good people.
And that's why everybody is at the show. The middle word, farm progress. To make progress, everyone here has new something, and I don't think it's all just sales pitch. It's like, can this work for your operation? Mm-hmm. Can this work with what you're doing, et cetera.
Yep. Yeah.
And it's a completely different world, just in general. I mean, just the size of operations and farms and everything else. It's not just the technology. It's just a different world completely. So it's not just what your dad did, but it's it's a completely different environment that you're operating in.
And you know how we went computers where, I mean, I'm older than you, but I remember when we like bought the first PC that you got from Best Buy, and, you know, Dad didn't
Played
want to touch
Oregon Trail.
it. Yeah, Oregon Trail, and you had nothing else, and AOL, and, you know, long phone modems, and etc. And look at how fast that has duplicated. I think we're set up, I mean, horse and buggy, now X9 Combine sitting right here. How much faster is it going to duplicate now with technology? I think we're just setting up to go even faster.
Well, I've already written AI patents 4 years ago for seeing what was coming.
Awesome.
I mean, machine learning and AI is here. I look at NVIDIA. I mean, $1 trillion market caps. Even with the S7, new cameras, all it is input. All that machine learning and everything works off inputs and data in. And data is king in this day and age. And you have to have the data, and everything is coming down to that, and it's going to exponentially increase.
So you're writing AI patents on the concaves or other things?
On the concaves and working with combine systems.
So you have other patents besides the concaves? You said you had
Yes.
30?
Yeah, I mean, the majority of the patents are concave related.
Okay.
Because, I mean, when we were coming out of the gate, I knew that our competition was deer, case, Fent, Agco, Kloss. I mean, I don't remember exactly what Deere's market cap is now, but $150 billion companies that have resources to the end of time. You have to, if you're going to come in, you have to also look at asset protection.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Very nice. I'm interested in the AI stuff on the other side because, like, I think of concave. It's like it's still a piece of steel, right? There's
Yeah,
no
but
computer
when
in
you're
it.
harvesting, so this is where it really came down to the fundamentals. Is that's the reason people say, well, does your concave work in like a Massey Ferguson or New Holland, or does it work in the new system or whatever? If you think about it, the one constant thing of all combines is they're threshing the crop with a rotor against some physical hard surface.
Mm-hmm.
And the OEM, the traditional, is a round bar for like corn and beans.
Yep.
So whether it's a Deere combine or a Case or a Fent, you're always threshing that grain or compressing that crop against the same hard steel physical process.
Yep.
So the patents is we change that piece of steel that you're threshing so it's more efficient, more effective. And that's where the majority of the patents are based. And then, like I said, I'm always constantly testing. And when we're testing, I'm always writing patents foreseeing the future as best I can.
Cool.
Where did you learn how to write the patents? Was that when you were in finance, or just figured it out?
Just knew we had something that worked really well, and we needed to protect it.
And having gone down that game a little, this thing is you don't think about, Corey, is you want to write a patent, in my world that I know about it, is broad enough that you cover all of the bases, but specific enough that the patent office says that this has a function to what you're trying to accomplish.
Yep.
But if you go too broad, then it'll come back and it'll say, that's like, I own a company, Virtual Auction. They're like, well, virtual is a thing and auction is very broad. You need to narrow that, like what it is, to specifically what you're trying to accomplish here, you know. But we didn't want to write it too narrow that somebody could just change a widget, a fidget, something, and then they have the same thing that we were doing, just they used a different, meter
Right.
or something.
Yeah, because you have some patents, right?
We did one when we wrote virtual auction software, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's it's art and science, and a good patent attorney is key. But it's not the easiest thing, but when you're in our business, and when you're in the market with the competitors that we have, there's no other choice.
And they don't come overnight. There's like a provisional patent, but they can take, like the ones that I did anyway, 3 years to go through the process. Have you seen the same thing?
Oh yeah, so it's on average 3 to 4 years before it's published.
Yeah.
If you can get pending patents just mean they're under an examination.
Correct.
And it's not until a pending patent doesn't really mean anything. It hasn't been litigated.
Yep.
And once it's gone through examination and litigated, and you have a published patent, that's when it has the value.
Yep.
Very cool. We went all over the place.
Oh,
We
man.
Probably didn't cover anything that Tanner wanted, but I think this was a better show than he could have ever thought up.
Yep.
So we do ask every guest, we kind of rotate, maybe quarterly, a new question, and then we do compile all the answers. And this question that we're asking now is, Brian, how do you juggle work and home life?
And while you're thinking of that, I'll give you a second to think on that. So juggle work and home life. Listeners, one of my takeaways from this is Brian's thinking of his answer is, do they care about my success? I kind of wrote that down on my paper, and I was thinking, man, as we are thinking of somebody to identify or choose a partner with, I know wholeheartedly that Corey wants me to be successful on my farm, and so he's giving me the right advice. Okay, when you pick your partners, whoever those partners are, when we on Farm for Profit are studying this, we're trying to put you with people that we think and feel care about your success.
I like that. Did you figure out a question?
Yeah, so
or answer for that?
I'm going to have probably a unique answer, but it's all integrated for us.
Okay.
It's all integrated. So Kimber breeds horses and shows horses and does that whole world. And I go to horse shows and I go out to the farm and I go see the foals when they come out. And just in that specific example, everything is kind of integrated.
Yeah.
So we don't necessarily, we couldn't bifurcate it if we wanted to.
Well,
And it's just not possible.
You talked about it earlier that she cared about where you were going with your business, so she cares about your success. It sounds like you care about her horses and what she's interested as well.
Exactly. And when Kimber and I were doing all the farm shows, she was in the booth selling.
He picked a good partner. See,
I can tell you, she can set a combine and tell you more about concaves than majority of farmers.
And what the heck you sending me Ethan for?
Well, you know.
there it is.
I don't think it's that unique of an answer because it sounded like a farmer's answer. Right?
Yeah,
Like farmers and their lives are all intertwined and sometimes don't have this barrier between home and work and all that. So.
I mean, we do set aside times for such things. Like we try to have nights where it's just us and we go out and we make a point to have time just for us, whether it be a trip somewhere or just going and eating somewhere. I mean, we make sure that we have that time where we can lay all the business and other things aside and just like enjoy each other and connect and whatever. Yeah. So I think that's important, but on a day-to-day basis, it just kind of all flows together.
Corey, do you find this? So my wife and I have been married 20 years now, and we'll go out to eat, and we used to have stuff to talk about. I say used to. Now we go talk about, of course, we talk about business, and we've tried to keep business out of the conversation, and we'll go out to eat, and we're just sitting there staring at each other thinking, man, I want to ask her about this, and she wants to ask me about that. And it's like,
and then I'm texting you, did you get this contract?
What do we talk about if we don't talk about business? Because we are intertwined into that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I don't know what everybody else talks about when they go out to eat. It's like, well, all right. Yay.
Well, you got
Maybe you
kids and all
just
that.
take cards and play card game or something,
But it's like, well, I know everything about you, and you know everything about me, and it's this old hat. So now we got to come up with
just
something new.
spending time together. It doesn't matter what you do or what you talk about. It's just being together, I think. So
now we just started judging people. Everybody that watches, what do you think they do? What do you think? No, so.
Well, it does take a certain ability to get out of that mindset, and like when I get in analytical mode, and it's not the same as me going on the lake and trying to surf.
Correct.
Right? There has to be some kind of ability to separate those, and I think that's a challenge for everyone.
I'm kind of glad Tanner wasn't on this episode because two analytical people like that.
Oh my goodness, we would have derailed.
Yeah,
we kept it on the rails.
We'd
be talking about Starlink.
He'd have Excel up and doing spreadsheets with you. Yeah, it'd be a mess. So.
Yeah. Well, thanks for being our guest there, Brian. Appreciate it. And again, if our listeners want to check your service out, give us the website one more time.
It's EstesPerformanceConcaves.com.
ESTES.
Correct.
Yep. So, thanks for coming, and listeners, have a good one.